Welcome to the Perfect Place to Put a Practice podcast by Scott McDonald and DrDemographics.com, the best source of demographic, psychographic, and marketing information for professionals.
So I have been asked many times the same question, and I wish to answer it here for you now. A lot of people are saying, look, I grew up California being the perfect place to move, set up a practice, start a business, and right now it's dying. So the question I'm also often asked is, why then is California dying? Well, I want to answer that question for you now. So stick with me through this episode and I'll answer that question. Now, why all the negative news in California is happening now? Will the bad news ever stop? And the answer is, well, a little complicated. Well, it could end if California or Californians really wanted it to stop. There are no natural disasters that are sure to make it continue. All the trouble is man-made, right? But there is no will to have that happen. In other words, there's no will to stop the bad news from happening. But it's not just California. There are several states that are continuing to have problems, and these problems are getting really serious. The U.S. Census Bureau has reported that California has lost population the last 3 years in a row. That's very unusual. This is happening, the loss, and it's not in question that it's happening. The cause is not in question either. The primary reason for the exodus, like the other states losing population, is the state's high housing costs. But other reasons include the long commutes, rising taxes, and the crowds, crime and pollution in the larger urban centers. That pretty much explains it all. That's why it is happening. Other markets are struggling too, of course, in the United States. Some large places that were thought to be bulletproof. Chicago, Illinois has been a favorite place of mine for a long time, as has Washington, D.C. Both the population centers are in the death grip of dysfunction, however. And we all see it. You see it. And it is death by suicide, slow suicide. So we are sure to know why people are leaving the greener pastures. The answer is, how do we reverse the trend? Whether it's a matter of attitude of the citizens, well, isn't it? Isn't that why it's leaving? It is because people don't want to stick around. We would assume that enlightened self-interest would be enough to stop economic harm, but experience has shown us that it is not. So, who wants to grow? Many of these larger places are struggling, and they're struggling not because they can't grow, but because they simply do not want to grow, and that's a problem. We are sure that someone is lying out there and someone else wants to believe the lies. So as I look at media, I keep being told, no, we're doing great, we're doing fantastic. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, recently held a press conference to report everything's fine, there's nothing to look at here. The media, who are supposed to tell the naked truth, seem to want the lies to continue. In other words, they're being a party to what is a basic falsehood. The biggest lie is that we can spend ourselves to prosperity. Economic decline could stop if Californians really wanted it to stop, but they do not. The state legislature is doing everything it can to continue losses in their projects that they're doing. There are no natural disasters that are making the situation continue, but it's hurting the entire nation. All the facts causing the population loss are present and are known. The same is true of economic laws such as inflation. But there has to be a will for them to reverse. There is no pain-free way out of this mess either. Certain parties want the public to be deceived and hope for easy answers, and that's a problem. There are no easy answers to get us out of this problem. There are no pain-free ways out of the mess either. Certain parties want the public to be deceived and are happy to hear the lies. And it may be that citizens themselves are hoping for no-cost solutions. The U.S. Census Bureau has reported that California has lost population the last 3 years in a row. This was unheard of when I was growing up. Next year looks worse. That it is happening, in other words, it is losing population, is not in question. The cause is not in question either. The primary reason, according to surveys, as we mentioned earlier for the exodus in the state, is the high housing costs. That's the number one. But other reasons include the long commutes, rising taxes, and crowds, significant crime and pollution in the larger urban centers. That pretty much explains it all. Without a change of assumptions, California and the nation can expect the same outcomes. And that's pretty sad. Now, many residents would rather believe the lies, the fabrications, that confront them. Chicago, Illinois has been a favorite place of mine for a long time, as has Washington, D.C. I love D.C. But they have deep problems that are being ignored. Now, the problem is it's not that they can't be known, but nobody wants to pay attention to what is required to make it fixed. Now, similarly, Detroit, Michigan is getting a lot worse. Poverty and population loss, and we all know it. If we choose to believe it, racism is the country's original sin and perpetual curse, and the police are its ministers. Within these cities, their mayors are ineffective as a force to manage population, and they love blaming racism and the population that exists there. It is an easy lie to blame the authorities for all woes, but it is appearing as a convenient dodge. This breeds institutional incompetence. So the mayors and the legislators are claiming we can't do anything about it. It's not our problem. No one wants to invest in cities because the fix is in. Corruption has grown so deep that to get a permit to build in these communities, Chicago, Detroit, and many others, well, it's hopeless. Now, generally, these population centers are in a death grip of dysfunction, and all can see it. It is a death by suicide, slow suicide. Those who know better are unwilling to vote the bums out. It is our fault. So ultimately, when we look at the problems that exist in some of these cities in the United States, the ones that are dying, is tied to the fact that people don't want the fixes to be in, and they don't want solutions that are going to require anything of them. So we are sure we know why people are leaving. The real question is, how do we reverse the trend before it is too late? And do the other states have the right to do anything to help? They certainly can't offer mandates. People will say, well, pay attention to your own politics. It is a matter of the attitude of the citizens, not a lack of opportunity that counts. We can assume that enlightened interest can be enough, but experience has shown us that it is not. Research shows that some don't want growth. Heck, many want free money and no risks. They want the fault of one political party to be the answer. Still, there is the faith that someone else will come along and bail them out. And Middle America seems willing to let them, in other words, the big cities, die a terrible death. And the coastal states seem fine setting harmful laws for smaller, less enlightened places. In other words, more conservative states. 2 Walmarts are closing in Portland, Oregon, and there's not a peep from politicians. The loss of jobs and opportunities for retail activity is huge. They're being looted out of existence. People in the neighborhood, young people mainly, get together and will do a mob. The local newspaper said this is no big deal. Maybe, and maybe not. But it's someone else's problem, right? This is building up to be a national trend. Not everywhere, but in some places it is. Now you want to know where to put a practice. Well, there is a missing element that so often goes ignored, and that is there has to be a will or a desire by local politicians to make things change. It is someone else's problem, right? And these are building to be national trends. You may assume, perhaps correctly, the big cities or big states are the ones that, like California, are going to have to fix their problem on their own. Smaller states with less resources and capital may believe, perhaps with some reason, that they have made their bed and should have to live with it, have to sleep in that bed. They keep electing poor mayors and governors in election after election with the same spiraling outcomes. And so we shouldn't be surprised that it happens. The result is a chronic repetition of social and monetary problems, such as public debt and regional inflation, that are hurting the outcomes outside their boundaries. Now listen, Florida and Texas may choose to ignore these trends, and eventually the piper must be paid by someone. Places of poverty and significant crime don't stay within their borders. They tend to leak out. Still, as a nation, profligate spending, like a plague, doesn't recognize borders any more than that. Do divorce and isolation represent the only practical solutions between states? Several budget mandates say the state employees are not allowed on official state business trips to these states because they hold unpopular views. California bans 23 states, or their employees traveling to 23 states, because they pass laws that Sacramento legislatures don't like. Other states are not playing ball. Many woke leaders, athletes, and scholars are being frozen out of the national debate because of California's attitudes. We simply don't want to look at what we don't want to see. Then again, if you move to another state that does have fiscal discipline, should you continue to support their poor choices forever? And it appears as though many people have simply said we're not going to do that. The states are developing some really bad blood with each other. They call that balkanization. I'm telling you all this because I'm afraid of some very, very negative things that are going to come. I'm afraid that some states are going to become so isolated they will not allow citizens from other places to come. It is as though there has been a civil war declared and nobody told us. Is it really possible that America could face the possibility of civil war in the near future? It seems unthinkable, and yet there is much to worry about here. In 2021, a national survey by pollster John Zogby found a plurality of Americans, 46%, believed a future civil war was likely. 43% felt it was unlikely, and 11% were just not sure. War seemed more likely for younger people, 53%, than older ones, 31%, and those residing in the South, 49%, and the Central Great Lakes region, 48%. You believe that this is possible. In the East, only 39% believe civil war is a reality. Meanwhile, the Republican Representative Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina made a false claim regarding election integrity and said, "If our election systems continue to be rigged, then it's going to lead to one place, and that's bloodshed. There's nothing I would dread doing more than having to pick up firearms against a fellow American." I think that's wonderful. But the translation of what she said was, it would be a shame if false election claims caused a civil war. But civil war is possible if we don't get our act together. These kinds of remarks should not be taken lightly. California is leading the way of intolerance for the rest of the country, and this will certainly keep it going. The recent survey did not ask people why civil war was possible or how it would happen. It's not over an issue like slavery, but rather maybe it's on taxes or voting rights. But we believe that there are several forces pushing many to imagine the unthinkable. And that's my message today. Tolerance is in short supply. If you would like to find out more about Dr. Demographics or practice site analysis, image restoration and rehabilitation, please give us a call at 800-849-0499 or visit us at drdemographics.com. Our job is to help clear up myth and to give you the facts you need to make important decisions. And thank you so much for watching.